The man on the pool table was still screaming when Zora Adeyemi put her hands inside him. "Hold his shoulders." Nobody moved. 6 men in that room, and not one of them moved. "I said hold his shoulders. He bucks. I lose the artery, and he dies on your felt." 2 came forward and pinned him flat. Behind her, a door opened. She felt the room change. 6 men's breathing shortening at once. She didn't turn around. Footsteps, unhurried. A black shirt buttoned to the throat, sleeves pushed to the elbow. Not a drop of blood on him, in a room where everything else had it. Is he awake? He's awake. Can he talk? No. Then she found it. Pinched. The bleeding stopped. "Okay," she breathed. "There you are." Baek Junseo said something in Korean. A man started to protest. The protest ended in a sound that wasn't a word. "Don't kill anybody over my table," Zora said. "I've got enough going on." He was found in the loading bay. Kwon says he came around the corner and the boy was already down. "Congratulations, Miss Adeyemi. I'm working." "Look at the wound." "I'm in the wound." "Then tell me." His voice never rose. It didn't need to. "Which way did the blade go in?" Zora went still. Because she knew. It hadn't come from the front. It came from behind, low and up. The way you stab a man you're standing next to. The way you stab a man who trusts you. She lifted her head. Junseo had a jade-handled knife open in his hand, the edge laid flat under a man's jaw. The man's name was Kwon. 2 weeks ago, he'd poured her a drink and told her about his daughter's piano recital. Junseo wasn't looking at Kwon. He was looking at her, waiting. Whatever she said next, a man was going to die in this room. CTA. Comment where you're watching from. And if you like stories where the quiet one turns out to be the most dangerous person in the room, like, subscribe, tap join. 6 weeks earlier, she came in through the front door. That was the first thing that was wrong with her. Zora parked her 14-year-old Corolla in the Circle Drive. Her phone lit up on the seat. Men's Central Jail. 3rd time that morning. She turned it face down and got out. A man met her at the door. Gray suit, hands folded. "Cha Minho. Phone, please." "No." He blinked. "Ma'am, there's client data on it. You take my phone, I can't do the job you're paying me to do, so, no. That's not how this works here." "Then somebody should have told me before I drove 40 minutes. She stood there, didn't shift her weight, didn't fill the silence. Kandahar had taught her that most people hand you what you asked for if you just refuse to be uncomfortable for 11 seconds. Minho touched his ear, said something low in Korean, listened. Then he stepped aside. 12 banker's boxes, 4 years of books. It took her 9 days to find the thing in them that was going to get her killed. There were 11 men in the dining room and she wasn't supposed to be in there. Minho had told her on day 1, quietly, like a favor. If Mr. Baek walks past you, you don't look at him. You look at the floor until he's gone. She'd said okay. She'd meant it at the time. Now she was in the doorway with a printout, and the man at the head of that table hadn't lifted his head when the door opened. A chair scraped back near the door. "I need 4 minutes, Zora said. Nobody moved. At the far end, a heavy-set man with silver at his temples set his cup down very slowly. "The accountant is talking. How nice. Sweetheart, we're in a meeting. You take Sue." She didn't know his name yet. She would. "I know." She slid the printout down the table. "But he's been losing $480,000 a year for 2 years, and I figured he'd want to hear it before dessert." Now Baek Junseo lifted his head. Up close, he was younger than the way men said his name. He looked at her for 3 full seconds. He didn't look at the paper. "You were told not to look at me." "I was. And I'd rather be rude than watch you get robbed." Somebody down the table made a noise. Junseo raised one finger off the wood and the noise stopped like a switch had been thrown. Explain it. Somebody's dirty cash goes into your garage and comes out as parking revenue. Clean, taxed, yours. Then a maintenance vendor invoices you for almost exactly that amount and takes it straight back out. So the garage makes more and spends more. The garage doesn't make anything. It's a laundry and you're holding the receipt. Your name's on the deposits. Whoever's doing this walks, and you go to federal prison for their business. The silence changed temperature. Zora was suddenly very aware that she was the only person in the building who wasn't armed. Junseo folded the paper and put it in his shirt pocket. Who else has seen this? Nobody. It's me and a laptop. He stood, came around the table and stopped close enough that she had to tip her chin to hold his eyes. She held them. 9 days. Yeah. 12 boxes. 11 and a half. Something moved behind his face. It wasn't a smile. Finish it in 2 weeks. Then it'll be wrong. 2 weeks means I'm guessing. And the last person who guessed in your books has been taking $400,000 a year off you. And you didn't know until a woman with a Corolla told you at lunch. Behind her, somebody actually inhaled. Junseo didn't blink. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And Miss Adeyemi. He was already turning away. When I walk past you in the hallway, you can look. She made it to her car before her hands started shaking. She sat with the engine off and let it happen, because it always happened after. Never during. 4 missed calls. She knew the number before she looked. Zoe. Toby's voice. 22, making it light like he was calling from a dorm room. The public defender came. 11 minutes. He had my file and another guy's in the same hand. He called me Anthony twice. Zora closed her eyes. Please, 4 years. Fight it and lose, it's 15. Her brother's voice cracked straight down the middle. I didn't do it. I was in the car. I know. So what do I do? Nothing. You don't sign anything. I'm getting you a real lawyer. Zoe, that's 80 grand. You don't have 80 grand. Zora looked out the windshield at the gate and the house behind it, where a man had just told her she could look at him. I'm working on it, she said. It was a Thursday. She'd worked until 9, gone to the kitchen for water, and heard it in the courtyard before she reached the sink. Not shouting. That was the strange part. Just shoes on gravel, a grunt, somebody's back hitting the side of a van. She should have gone the other way. She went to the window. 4 men under the security light. 2 had a third by the arms. Young, maybe 24, blood coming out of his nose and down over his mouth, talking fast and high in Korean, the same 3 or 4 words over and over. Baek Junseo stood in front of him with his hands in his pockets. He wasn't doing anything. That was what she couldn't stop looking at. He let the kid beg, let him finish, and when the kid ran out of air, he said one short sentence back. The kid started crying. Then Junseo took his right hand out of his pocket, and there was a knife in it, white handle, opened one-handed, no flourish. The way a man opens a knife he's opened 10,000 times. And he put it through the kid's thigh. The sound went through the glass, and through the wall, and into Zora's sternum. He pulled it out, wiped the blade twice on the kid's own jacket, folded it, put it back in his pocket. 4 seconds, start to finish. He said something to Minho. The men let go. The kid went down into the gravel. Junseo turned and walked toward the house. He looked up on his way. Right at the kitchen window, right at her. Zora did not move. She stood there with a glass of water in her hand and let him see her seeing him, and she did not step back, and she did not look away. He held it 2 seconds. Then he kept walking. She went out there anyway. 11 minutes. That was how long it took her legs to agree with her. The kid was propped against the van tire, hands wrapped around his own thigh. Nobody within 30 feet of him. Hey, look at me. English? A little, move your hands. No, no. Move your hands or you'll bleed out being polite. He moved them. She pressed 2 fingers alongside the wound and watched the flow. Nowhere near the femoral, not even close, which meant it hadn't been an accident of anatomy. Whoever put that blade in had known exactly what he was avoiding. You're not going to die. You're going to hate the next 6 weeks, but you're not going to die. She stripped off her jacket, folded it, pressed down hard. He howled. Yeah, hold that. Both hands. All your weight. They said no, doctor. I know what they said. Footsteps on the gravel. Miss Adeyemi. Minho. She didn't turn. He needs sutures and antibiotics. That's not your Minho. She looked up at him then. I'm the person out here holding it. That makes it mine. Get me hot water, towels, a suture kit, a sewing needle and fishing line if you don't have one. Now. Or in 4 days he's septic in a room upstairs and somebody has to explain that. Minho stood there. Then he went. Her hands knew the work before she did. A 19-year-old from Mobile, Alabama, in the back of a vehicle that was still moving. She'd kept going 6 minutes after she knew, because the 2 men holding the light didn't know yet. 40 minutes later, the second set of footsteps came. She knew whose. Everyone in that house knew whose. She kept sewing, tied the last stitch, cut the line with her teeth, taped a folded towel over it. Don't walk on it tonight, she told the kid. Tomorrow you walk on it, not tonight. The kid said something to Junseo, fast and frightened. Junseo answered in 3 words. The kid stopped talking. Zora sat back on her heels and looked up. You missed the artery on purpose. Yes. Why? Because I wanted him to walk out of here. Junseo looked down at the boy without any particular feeling in it. He'll tell people. A dead man tells nobody anything. That's what he's for. That's what he's for. She stood, gravel printed on her knees, hands red to the second knuckle, and distantly aware that she was very calm, and that being this calm was probably its own kind of problem. You watched from the window, he said. Yeah. Most people don't. Most people haven't scraped a friend off a road. Something in his face shifted a 1/4 inch. Where? Kandahar. Then Helmand. 68 whiskey. Army. 4 years. That's not on your resume. You read my resume? I read everything that comes into this house. Then you read the part where I do books. She met his eyes. The other part isn't for sale. He looked at her a long moment. Minho says you told him to get you a suture kit. I did. Minho doesn't take instructions from the bookkeeper. He did tonight. I know. He turned to go. That's why I came down. She started staying later. She told herself it was the deadline. 3 weeks was tight, and the boxes got worse the deeper she went. She stayed later than the deadline required. She knew it. Because after 10, the house went quiet, and after that, the door at the end of the hall would open. The first night, he said, "You're still here." The second night, he said nothing at all, put a bottle of water on the corner of the table, and left. The third night, he sat down across from her. Show me the Long Beach numbers. She showed him. 8 months where the brokerage fees ran double and the volume didn't. He listened without interrupting, which almost nobody did, and asked one question at the end. It was the right question. Who signs the contracts? That's what I can't get. Same signature block on all of them. Same 3 letters, and I can't read them. He turned the page around, looked at it for maybe a second and a half. Then he put it back down and didn't say a word, and his face didn't change at all. Zora watched him do that. You know whose that is? Yes. Are you going to tell me? No. Because you don't trust me. Because you're more useful not knowing. He stood. Keep going. don't skip the laundromats. Nobody launders through laundromats anymore. It's don't skip the laundromats. She didn't skip the laundromats. 8 days out from her deadline, Yu Taeksu found her in the kitchen at 8 in the morning. There she is, the famous accountant. Up close, he was bigger than he'd looked at the table. Good suit, the kind of face that had been handsome 30 years and 40 pounds ago. He had a way of standing that took up a doorway without seeming to. Mr. Yu. You know my name. He looked delighted. He leaned against the counter beside her, close enough to be friendly, close enough to be something else. How much are they paying you? That's between me and him. Whatever it is, it's not enough. He picked up a mug that wasn't his. You know how long I've been in this family? 19 years. I carried his father's coffin. I sat outside that boy's bedroom door for 3 months when there were people who wanted him gone. I slept in a chair. Mr. Yu. And in 19 years, he went on, nobody in this family has ever walked into a closed dining room and talked. There it was. I had something he needed to hear. You had something you needed him to hear from you. That's different. That's a very different thing, sweetheart. And I'm not angry about it. I'm impressed. But I've watched people come through that gate thinking they'd found a shortcut, and I've watched what happens to them. Zora set her cup down and turned to face him fully. Are you threatening me, or are you nervous? The warmth went out of his face like a light going off. For 1 second, she saw exactly what was under it. Then it came back on. I'm looking out for you. This is a house full of Korean men who've known each other since they were children, and you're... He gestured at her, vaguely, generously. You're going to stand out no matter what you do. That's not fair. I didn't make the world. But when something goes wrong in here, and something always goes wrong in here, people look for the face that doesn't match. He straightened his cuffs. Finish your job, take the check, go home. He walked out. Zora looked at the coffee going cold in her hands and thought, Hanul Facilities. 19 years. 3 initials a man read in a second and a half, and wouldn't say out loud. And he came in here to find out how much I've found. And under all of it, quieter, meaner. He's not wrong about the face. 3 days later, the envelope came. Not to the house. To her apartment in Lamert Park, in her own mailbox. Busan return address. Her name spelled correctly. She opened it standing in the lobby. A compliance division expanding. An English-speaking forensic accountant with U.S. experience. 2-year contract, housing covered. Salary, $290,000 a year. Signing bonus, wired within 5 business days, $100,000. Zora read that line 4 times. 80 for Toby's lawyer. 20 left over. She sat down on the lobby steps and did not move for a long time, and what she felt was not relief. It was colder and further down, and it took her a minute to put a word on it. Somebody knows exactly what I need. Nobody in Busan knew what her brother's defense cost. Somebody in Los Angeles did. What woke her was the front door, not the sound of it opening, the sound of it being shouldered open, and then 4 or 5 men moving fast across marble in a house where nobody ever moved fast. Zora was up before she was awake. Medic brain. It doesn't ask. She got to the hall in time to see them come through. Minho first, holding the door. 2 men she didn't know carrying a third between them. Blood coming off him in a line across the floor. Then Junseo, walking on his own, one hand pressed flat against his own left side. Black shirt on a black suit, so you couldn't see it. You could only see the way the fabric clung and moved wrong. He stopped when he saw her. Go back in the room. No. Miss Adeyemi. Who's worse, him or you? Him. Then put him on the dining table and get the lights on. Nobody moved. Every man in that hall looked at Junseo. He looked at her for half a second. Then he said something short in Korean, and the hall came apart into motion. She was already gone. Kitchen, sideboard drawer hauled onto the counter, because she'd made Minho stock it 2 weeks ago and he'd grumbled and done it anyway. Left shoulder, high, through and through. He was gray. His lips were going the wrong color. She got 2 fingers on his throat and got a pulse like a bird in a bag. He needs a hospital. No hospital, said one of the men. Zora looked up the length of the table. Junseo stood at the end of it with his hand still on his own side and his face completely level. He'll die here. Then he dies here. That's not Miss Adeyemi. He never raised his voice. 2 hospitals in this county will take a gunshot without calling the sheriff. Both are 90 minutes at this hour, and one of them isn't ours anymore. You have what's in that drawer, and you have every man in this room. Tell me what you need. She held his eyes 1 beat. Then she snapped the gloves on. Somebody behind his head. Don't let it move. You. She pointed at the biggest man there. Hands here. Press. Don't lift up to look. I don't care what you feel. Minho, brightest lamp in this house, 90 seconds. And somebody find me a plastic bag and tape. A bag? Go. She sealed the chest wound with a cut-open grocery bag taped on 3 sides, because that's what you do when you don't have a chest seal. 40 minutes and his breathing went bad, and she peeled the 4th side up and let the air hiss out of him and watched his color come back like somebody turning a dial. Nobody spoke unless she asked them something. At one point, she looked up, and there were 9 men standing in absolute silence, watching a black woman with her hands inside their friend, and she thought, very briefly, very clearly, this is the safest I have ever been in this house, and it's because I'm useful. She stripped the gloves off. He'll live if he doesn't get an infection. He'll get an infection. So somebody's getting me antibiotics tomorrow, or all of this was theater. Then she sat down on the floor with her back against the wall, because her legs had stopped participating. 6 nights. That letter had been sitting in her nightstand drawer. She hadn't answered it. She hadn't thrown it away either. CTA. If you're still with me, drop a comment. And if you want the rest of this, hit subscribe and tap join, because it gets worse from here. The room emptied. They carried him upstairs. Somebody started on the table with towels. When she looked up, Junseo was still standing at the end of the room, still with his hand on his side. Sit down. I'm fine. Mr. Baek. She got up, and it took her 2 tries. You've been standing there 2 hours with your hand in the same place, and you haven't taken it off once. Sit down. They did it in the library with the door shut, because he wouldn't do it in front of anybody. He sat on the edge of the walnut table and unbuttoned the shirt himself, one-handed, slowly. Zora saw the whole left side of him for the first time, and saw that tonight's wound was the newest thing on it by about 9 years. She didn't comment. She'd been in enough bodies to know when a man's history isn't being offered. Turn to the light. A graze, but a serious one. 4 inches gouged along the ribs, deep enough in the middle that she could see the pale line of bone at the bottom of it. This needed closing at midnight. It's closed now. It's not closed now, that's the entire... She stopped, breathed. Hold still. She irrigated it. He didn't move. She debrided the edges, and he didn't move for that either, and she found herself getting irritated at him for it, which was insane, and she knew it was exhaustion. You can make a sound, she said, threading the needle. It's allowed. No. There's nobody in here. You're in here. She looked up. He was watching her. Not the wound. Her. Zora put her eyes back down and started sewing. 11 stitches. She took her time, because it was going to be there forever, and something in her decided it was going to be a straight line. Her knuckles kept brushing his skin. She stopped noticing around the 4th stitch and started noticing again. Badly. Around the 8th. You told them no hospital, she said, to have something in the air. Yes. He's somebody's son. He's mine. Junseo said it flatly. If I put him in an emergency room tonight, a nurse makes a phone call and a detective sits by his bed for 4 days. Either he talks and 40 people lose everything, or he doesn't, and he does 11 years for a gun he didn't fire. He watched her hands. So I gave him to you instead. That wasn't mercy. That was arithmetic. You could have told me that 2 hours ago. You didn't need it 2 hours ago. You needed a lamp. Zora tied off the last stitch. She should have stepped back. The job was done and there was no reason on earth for her to still be standing between his knees. She stayed there. Can I ask you something? Yes. That night in the courtyard, with the boy. She looked up. Did you enjoy it? No, he said. But I'd do it again on Tuesday. That's not better. I didn't say it was better. He leaned forward, 4 inches, and the whole room got smaller. You want me to tell you I'm not what I am? I won't. I've been this since I was 22, and the alternative was my mother in a car with a bomb under it. There's no version of me that's soft, Miss Adeyemi. There's only the version that's careful about where he puts it. And where do you put it? On the people who earn it. And what do I get? The question was out of her mouth before she'd built it. It just came. Junseo looked at her a long moment. Then he reached up and took the surgical scissors out of her hand, slowly, 1 finger at a time, and set them on the table beside him. You get the truth, he said, which is more than anybody else in this house gets, and it's going to cost you more than the money does. Neither of them moved. She could see the pulse in his throat over the open collar. She was so tired everything had gone slightly bright at the edges, and she knew with total clarity that if she leaned down 4 inches, something would happen she could not unmake. She didn't lean down. She stepped back. Sleep on your right side. 10 days. I know. Good. She picked up the kit and walked out, and didn't run, and the only reason she didn't run was that she'd have had to explain it to somebody in the hall. She started looking into Busan the next morning, not because she wanted the job, because she audited things for a living, and 1 line in that letter had been sitting wrong in her chest for 8 days. Your name was recommended to us by a colleague in Los Angeles. Zora had no colleagues in Los Angeles. She had 4 former clients, all 4 under NDA, and not one of them knew she had a brother, so she pulled the thread. Seonghan Compliance Partners was real. It was also a wholly owned subsidiary of a holding company registered in Nevada 11 months ago, with 1 director and 2 wire transfers in its entire history, both of them from Hanul facilities. She drove back to Hancock Park doing 60 on surface streets with both hands locked on the wheel. Taeksu wrote it. Taeksu's been taking $400,000 a year through a parking garage, and when a woman with a laptop found it in 9 days, he built a company on the other side of the world and offered her $300,000 to leave. He'd offered exactly what her brother's defense cost, which meant he'd been looking at her since the day she walked in. 11 time zones from anyone who'd noticed she'd stopped calling. That wasn't a bribe. Taeksu had spent 19 years reading people, and he'd looked at her for 6 weeks, and he didn't think she'd stay bought. He'd built her a door with nothing on the other side of it. She didn't pull over. She kept driving. Oh, Toby, she said to the windshield. I'm so sorry, baby. Then the gate, and Minho standing inside it, and Zora put her window down. She found Junseo in the office off the 2nd floor landing, and she didn't knock. Say the name. She put the laptop on his desk, open, turned around. Seonghan is a shell. It sits under a Nevada holding company with one director and 2 deposits in its entire life, both from Hanul facilities. She tapped the screen. Somebody took $400,000 of your money, built a company in Korea with it, and used it to offer me a job. Junseo read the screen. He read it longer than he'd needed to read the brokerage signature, and Zora understood, watching him, that he wasn't reading. He was deciding what to do with his face. When did it come? 8 days ago. 8 days. He looked up. Why? Because it was $300,000 and I needed to think about it. She set it flat and let it sit there and did not apologize for it, and something in his expression sharpened with what might have been respect. And now? Now it's not a job offer. It's a hole in the ground. He wasn't buying me. He was moving me somewhere I could disappear out of. She put both hands on the desk. So say it. 3 initials. Out loud. No. Why? Because the day I say it out loud is the day it starts, and I'm not ready to start. He closed the laptop. 3 things changed tonight. Minho drives you. Your car stays here. You don't go to your apartment alone. So I get a cage. You get a driver. Same building, different sign. She didn't move. 1 condition. You're not in a position. 1 condition. Or I finish your books from a Starbucks and you can wonder every night who's reading over my shoulder. Junseo's jaw moved. Say it. Minho doesn't follow me. He walks with me. Her voice didn't shake. I've had my whole life being followed by men who said it was for my safety. Store security. 2 cops on Crenshaw when I was 17. I'm not doing it in here too. He walks beside me or he stays in the car. The silence went on a long time. Beside you, Junseo said. Thank you. Don't thank me. He pulled a folder toward himself. It costs me nothing and it buys me the version of you that keeps working. I'm not being kind. I'm being efficient. Zora picked up her laptop. I know, she said. That's the only reason I believe you. For 9 days, Cha Minho drove her. He was a terrible driver and an excellent conversationalist. And those 2 things turned out to be related, because he did most of his talking with his hands. He told her about his mother's church in Torrance. He told her he'd wanted to be a chef, and had gotten as far as culinary school in Pasadena before his uncle called in a favor. On day 4, in a very careful voice, he asked whether it was rude to ask what her braids were called. She laughed for the first time in a month and told him, and he practiced saying it wrong the whole way down Wilshire until she was crying. On day 6, he said there was a place on Olympic doing a tasting menu in October, and that he'd been saving for it since March, and would she come, because nobody in that house would appreciate it, and she'd at least pretend. She said yes. On Sunday, he drove her to Men's Central, and walked beside her all the way to the visitor line, and then stopped. I'll wait here. You can come in? No. He was smiling, but he meant it. That's yours. Toby looked thinner behind the glass. He asked who the Korean guy in the suit was, and Zora said he was a co-worker, and Toby said co-worker, and she said shut up, and for 18 minutes it was almost like being a family. On the drive back, Minho said, He looks like you. He looks like our dad. Then your dad's handsome. Our dad's dead. Then he was handsome. Minho changed lanes badly. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not, but it's okay that it's not. He glanced over. My father, too. 6 years. Zora looked out at Vermont going by. How do you do this? She said. This job, this house, how do you? She stopped. You're a nice person, Minho. So are you. I'm not, though. Minho laughed. Miss Adeyemi, I watched you put your hands in a man's chest on a dinner table and tell 9 grown men to shut up. He shrugged. Nice people are just dangerous people who chose. They killed him on a Thursday, at 9:20 in the morning, at a red light at Western and 3rd, Zora was in the back seat because she'd been on the phone with the public defender's office and needed room to spread paperwork out. That was it. That was the whole reason. She'd sat up front every other day for 9 days, and that morning she'd said, "Do you mind?" and Minho had said, "Your car." She heard the motorcycle come up the outside lane. She looked up, because she was a person who looked up at motorcycles. The window imploded. She didn't hear the shots. She'd stopped hearing shots years ago. Her brain filed them under something else and gave her the rest of the information first. The glass, the pressure, the smell. She was on the floor of the back seat before she knew she'd moved, and the car was rolling forward into the intersection with nobody's foot on anything, and somebody was leaning on a horn, and the motorcycle was already 2 blocks gone. "Minho." She got up over the seat. "Minho." He was still belted in, both hands still on the wheel. He'd never gotten one off. Zora got out into traffic, got the driver's door open, and she was already saying, "Okay, okay, okay," in the flat, calm voice that had nothing to do with how she felt, and she had his collar open and her fingers on his throat, looking for the thing she could fix. There wasn't one. One of them had gone through the base of his skull, and she knew it in less than 3 seconds, and she kept working on him anyway for 1 minute and 40 seconds in the middle of Western Avenue while strangers screamed on the sidewalk. Because there was nobody else there to tell. The house was full of men and completely silent. Zora sat in the kitchen with a blanket somebody had put on her and blood drying brown on the front of her blouse. Somebody set tea in front of her. She didn't touch it. Junseo came in at 4 in the afternoon. He'd been at the coroner's. He'd been in Torrance. He'd been in a room upstairs for 40 minutes with the door shut and 11 men outside it. And when he walked into that kitchen, there was nothing on his face at all. He pulled out the chair across from her. "Tell me." "Motorcycle. 2 up. Outside lane at the light." Her voice came out level. "Shooter was on the back. 4 in him, 3 in the door." "Which seat were you in?" Zora looked up. "Back," she said. "I'm always in the front. I had paperwork." She swallowed. "There's one in the headrest." Junseo didn't say anything. They weren't shooting at him. Her voice broke on the second word and she hated it. "They were shooting at the front seat. He was in the front seat because I had paperwork. Stop. He died in my place. He died at his post." Junseo leaned forward. "There is a difference, and you will learn it, or this will eat you." Cha Minho got in that car every morning knowing what the car was for. He knew. He took the job. Do not take that away from him by making it an accident. Zora put her hands over her face. He didn't reach for her. He didn't touch her at all. He sat 6 feet away with his forearms on the table and let her do it. And when she was done, he said quietly, "His mother's name is Cha Yoon-hee. She's 63. She has a mortgage with 190,000 left on it, and she works at a dry cleaner on Crenshaw." He said it like a man reading numbers off a page, because that was the only way he could say it at all. "That's paid tomorrow. She'll never know where it came from, and she'll never work again. That's what I have. That's all there is. There's nothing else I can do for him." "There's one thing." "Yes," he said. "There's one thing." And for the first time since the courtyard, Zora looked at Baek Junseo and understood all the way down what he actually was. Not because he was raging, but because he wasn't. He was calm the way a scalpel is calm. "Say the name." "Not yet." "He tried to kill me. I know what he did." Junseo stood. "And when I move, he goes into the ground, and so does every man who took his money, and I get exactly 1 attempt at that. If I go tonight because I'm angry, I get him and I lose 40. So I'm going to be patient." He pushed the chair in. "You're going to hate me for it for about a week." He was already at the door when she said it. "He's going to come for me now." Junseo stopped. "Yes," he said. "He is. And when he does, you're going to let him." 4 days later, Zora sat down on the side steps of a church in Torrance, while 300 people ate rice inside. She picked those steps on purpose. They were the only door a man would use if he didn't want to be seen leaving. She waited 20 minutes. Then Yu Taek-soo came out in a black suit with a card in his hand for the mother, and sat down beside her like they'd arranged it. "Terrible," he said. "Terrible thing. 29 years old." Zora didn't answer. "You were in the car." "You know I was." He looked out at the parking lot. "That must have been very frightening." "Say what you came to say." He nodded slowly, like a man conceding a small point in a long friendship, and took a folded piece of paper out of his jacket. He held it in both hands without offering it. "Your brother," he said. "Toby, Module 4300. He's got a hearing on the 14th. Zora went very still. "There's a man in that building I've known 11 years. Not a guard. Guards are nobodies. Guards get transferred. This one decides who sleeps in which room." He turned the paper over in his hands. "Right now, your brother's in with the boys who cry at night. On the 14th, they redo the rooms. Don't." "I'm not doing anything, sweetheart. I'm telling you whether." Zora was on her feet. "You put a bullet through the head of a 29-year-old man who wanted to be a chef," she said, and her voice was so quiet that he leaned in to hear it. "And you came to his funeral, and you're eating his mother's rice, and now you're on her steps threatening my baby brother. I'm offering you an exit. You already offered me one. It was a plane ticket to a country where nobody would look for me." Taek-soo's face did the thing again, the light going off behind it. "Then let me be clear, since we're being clear. There are 2 pieces of paper in the world that matter to me. One is a brokerage contract with my initials on it, in a box in that house. The other is in my pocket." He stood. He was much bigger standing up. "Give me the first. You take the second. Your brother stays in 4300. You go home to Limert Park. You never see any of us again. And in 6 months you'll tell yourself you did the smart thing, and you'll be right. And if I don't?" "Then on the 14th I don't do anything at all," Taek-soo said. "That's the beautiful part. I just don't make a phone call. And a room full of strangers does it for me. And you spend the rest of your life knowing you chose a Korean gangster over your mother's son." He set the folded paper on the step beside her. 14th. That's 8 days. Don't call me. I'll find you." He went back inside to the funeral. Zora sat down very slowly, because her legs had gone, and unfolded the paper. It was a photograph, printed on cheap paper. Toby in an orange jumpsuit, in a line of men, taken from above at an angle only a camera on a jail ceiling could give. Somebody had circled his face. She had the contract in her hand 90 minutes later. Box 7. Second folder from the back. 4 pages, stapled. And on the last one a signature block with 3 initials that a man had once read in a second and a half and refused to say out loud. Zora stood in the dark library and did the arithmetic. She could photograph it and be at a mailbox in 20 minutes. Nobody watched her in this room. Nobody ever had. She could hand Yu Taek-soo the only thing that could end him, and on the 15th she could see her brother's face behind the glass in the module where boys cry at night. She stood there for 11 minutes. Then she put the contract back in the folder, and the folder back in the box, and went out to the hall and threw up into a planter. Afterward, she sat on the bottom stair with her back against the banister, and understood something she'd have preferred not to know. She hadn't put it back because it was right. She'd put it back because she'd run the numbers on Taek-soo keeping his word, and they didn't clear. A man who murders a driver to reach a passenger does not leave the passenger breathing. She'd have handed it over otherwise. In a heartbeat. For Toby, she'd have burned that entire house down and slept fine. Zora put her face in her hands. "Okay," she said to the empty hall. Okay, so we do it the other way. She didn't go to Junseo. She went up the east stairs at 9 in the morning, because she'd spent the night reading Hanul's outflows, and she'd found something she couldn't explain, and there was exactly one person in that house old enough to explain it. She'd seen the old woman maybe 6 times in 7 weeks, always at the top of those stairs, always seated, always with a black lacquer cane against the arm of the chair. Nobody had ever introduced them. Twice, Zora had looked up on her way past and found the old woman already looking down. Baek Junseo was in the sunroom with a newspaper she wasn't reading. 81 years old, 6 inches under 5 feet, hair set that morning by somebody who came to the house to do it. She didn't look up. Sit down, Miss Adeyemi. Zora sat. You want to know if I can stop the 14th? How? Because Yu Tae-soo buried a boy on Tuesday and then walked outside to talk to you alone, and there is only one thing in the world he could have said. Myung-suk folded the newspaper. Do not be impressed. Be seated. She poured 2 cups of barley tea and handed Zora hers with both hands. Zora took it with both hands, which she had learned from Minho, in a car, going down Wilshire. Can you stop it? No, but you don't need me to. Myung-suk set her cup down. Your brother is awaiting trial. The review on the 14th is a bureaucratic function performed by a sergeant with 400 inmates. Tae-soo's man can whisper into it. He cannot control it. Get the boy a lawyer. Filed today. A defendant with private counsel and a motion in front of a judge is expensive to hurt. So he's safe. I said expensive. I did not say safe. The old woman's eyes came up. It buys you days, not walls. Tae-soo has had 19 years to collect handles, and you have seen one of them. Do not walk out of here believing you have solved your brother. You have only bought the time to solve mine. Zora sat with that. That's $80,000. It is $80,000, Myung-suk agreed. And my grandson has that in a drawer in his office, and you have not asked him for it. And I would like to know why. Because then he owns it. Ah. Because the second I take it, everything after that is... Zora stopped, started again. I've watched him buy things all month. He buys a mortgage. He buys a hospital. That's how he loves people. He pays for them. And the day I let him pay for my brother is the day I'm not somebody he's choosing. I'm a line item he keeps current. The old woman looked at her a long time. You are correct, she said. And you are going to take the money anyway, because your brother's ribs do not care about your dignity, but not as a gift. She reached beside the chair and picked up a slim leather folder that had been sitting there the whole time, and Zora understood suddenly that this conversation had been scheduled. As an advance against fee, against this one. What is it? Open it. It was a ledger. Handwritten, columns in Korean, dates going back. She flipped. 9 years. Names down the left. Numbers across. And on the 4th page, in a hand that had gotten shakier over time but never careless, Yu Tae-soo. Beside it, a column of figures that did not stop. I came up here to ask you why his payments are so small, Zora said. Yes, that is the right question, and it is why you are sitting in that chair. Myung-suk tapped the leather. 11 months of Hanul is what you found. That is the tale. This is the animal. Zora looked up. You've had this 7 years. Yes. And Minho is... Say it. Minho is dead. Yes. The old woman's face did not move. And when I began, my grandson was 29, and Yu Tae-soo had the loyalty of 19 men who'd known him since childhood. If I had spoken then, Junseo would have died in a car in the first week. So you counted instead. I counted instead. Every year the number who would follow Tae-soo went down, and the number who would follow my grandson went up. It crossed last spring. I have been waiting for a reason and a witness. Yu Tae-soo has now given me both, by shooting a driver on Western Avenue in front of 40 people. That's monstrous. Yes. You could have. I could have. And then I would have been a woman who was right, with 2 dead grandsons. Ma Young-suk lifted her chin. I would rather be a monster with 1 living one. Zora looked down at 9 years of arithmetic. Somebody else's. Why me? Why not hand it to him? Because he would use it to kill. The old woman's voice sharpened for the first time. He would put 9 men in the ground in 1 night and lose everything my husband built, and the survivors would spend 10 years coming back for him. That is not a plan. That is a tantrum with logistics. She tapped the leather. You are going to build something else, something that takes Yu Taksu apart in front of the people who love him, so that when it is finished, not 1 man in this family lifts a finger for his memory. And you think I can do that? I think you found in 9 days what nobody in this house found in 7 years. And I think you have 8 days left, which is 8 days more than Cha Minho had. Zora Adeyemi worked for 6 days. She barely left the library. She had Junseo's people bring her 3 things and wouldn't say why. 4 years of Hanul bank statements, the guest list from his father's memorial dinner, and a private investigator's number. On day 2, she filed for Toby, real firm, downtown. A woman named Delacroix, who took the retainer and had a motion in front of a judge in 48 hours, and who told her, plainly, that a motion is a delay and not a shield, and to stop asking her for a promise she couldn't make. Zora took the money out of Junseo's drawer herself and left a signed promissory note in its place. 8%. 36 months. He found it that evening and stood looking at it for a while. You could have asked me. I did ask you, that's the paper. I'd have given it to you. I know. She didn't look up from the ledger. That's why I didn't ask. He read it again. 8%. You're insulting me. I'm pricing you. Zora turned a page. Everybody in this house is on your books somewhere. Minho was on your books. His mother's on your books as of yesterday. I've seen the whole ledger, Mr. Baek. I know exactly what it looks like to be loved by you, and I'm not going on it. Junseo set the paper down. Then what do you want to be? Zora stopped writing. She looked up, and he was standing there in a black shirt with his hands at his sides, and 11 stitches under it that she'd put there herself. And the question had not been rhetorical. He was waiting. I want to be the one who says no to you, she said, and still be here in the morning. Junseo held her eyes. You've been doing that since the 4th day, he said, and walked out. On day 6, she had it. She laid it out on the walnut table at 10 at night, Junseo on one side, his grandmother at the head. Hanul isn't a company, it's a bucket. Money goes in from your garage and out to 12 places. She dealt the pages like cards. 2 are the Nevada Shell and the Busan firm. That's his exit. Look at the other 10. Junseo looked. These are men. These are your men, Kwan, Park Sang-woo, the 2 brothers from the Vermont laundromats. 10 men on your payroll taking money from Taeksu for between 2 and 6 years. She sat back. Now, look at the amounts. They're small. They're tiny. 900 a month, 1,500. One of them's been getting 600 a month for 6 years. She looked between them. That's not what you pay a conspirator. That's what you pay a man who tipped you off once and never got off the hook. 10 men who each think they took one small favor. Not one knows about the other 9. And every one of them is terrified you'll find out. Mi Young-suk made a small sound that in a younger woman would have been a laugh. So they're his, Junseo said. That's what he thinks. But loyalty bought at 600 a month isn't loyalty. It's debt. And debt goes to whoever holds the paper. She put her hand flat on the ledger. I hold the paper. Junseo went very still. You want to turn them. I want to give them a door. One at a time, privately, before the 14th. We know. It's forgiven. Here's your amount and your date, And next week you're going to stand in a room and say it out loud. And if you don't, you're the only one who didn't, and you'll be standing next to Taek-soo when it happens. Say 2 of them go to him. 1 might. Not 2. Why not? Junseo didn't move. You've never met these men. I've known them 20 years. Sang-woo has a wife in Seoul and a daughter at UCLA, and if he decides the safest place to stand is behind Taek-soo, then Taek-soo knows the whole shape of this on Tuesday, and I lose the only advantage you've built. Zora didn't answer straight away. Then he's not first, she said. He's 8th. I go to the 2 smallest amounts first, the ones who've been most frightened the longest. And by the time I get to Sang-woo, I'm not asking him to take a risk. I'm telling him 7 men already did. The room was quiet. 10 men who've each carried this alone for 6 years, she said. And you tell them 9 others have the same secret? That's not a threat. That's relief. Half of them are going to cry. Junseo looked at his grandmother. She was already looking at him. She's right, the old woman said. And it is better than right. Do you understand what she has built, Junseo? Not a case. A room. You Taek-soo will walk into a room believing he has 10 men in it, and find he has none, in front of everyone, and he will have to stand there while it happens. He'll fight. Yes, said Zora. He will. Then there's one more thing you haven't accounted for. There's 2. She met his eyes. He needs a reason to come, and he needs to think he's won. She slid the last page across the table, a photocopy of the Long Beach brokerage contract. 4 pages. Signature block. 3 initials. So on the 13th, she said, I'm going to call him and tell him I'm taking the deal, and I'm going to bring him this. She called him at 8:15 on the morning of the 13th. I want to do it today. Silence. Then, warm as a hand on the back of the neck. Sweetheart. Don't. I'm just pleased. I told Junseo 2 months ago you were the smartest person in that house. I have the contract. 4 pages, original, not a copy. It's the only one. Zora kept her voice thin and fast, the voice of a woman who'd been awake all night, which she had been. And I want the paper on Toby, signed, something in my hand. That's not how... Then it's not happening. A longer pause. Where? The house. Absolutely not. I don't have a car, I don't have a driver. There's 2 men on me every time I go past the gate. She let it crack. Where exactly do you think I can go? We do it Saturday, off-site. The 14th is tomorrow. He stopped. That was the whole thing, right there. She'd spent 2 days building a woman for him, a frightened one who'd panicked about a deadline and stopped thinking 3 steps out. He's in Long Beach until 4. The whole floor goes with him. She swallowed audibly. 11 o'clock, side door. 19 years is a long time to be right about a house. He knew that door. He knew when Long Beach ran because he'd built the Long Beach run. 11, he said. He came at 10:40, because of course he did. And it didn't matter, because they'd been ready since 9. He let himself in with his own key. The corridor was empty. The kitchen was empty. He pushed the library door open and said, Zora. The library was empty too. He stood there 1 full second. Then he turned and walked back up the corridor, faster now, into the dining room at the front of the house. The lights were on. 31 men, standing in a horseshoe against the walls. Absolutely silent. The 2 elders seated at the far end in white. The long table pushed aside. Baek Junseo in the middle of the floor with his hands in his pockets. And Zora Adeyemi beside him. Not behind. Beside. Black dress. Ledger under her arm. Taek-soo's face went through 4 things in a second and a half, and landed on a wide, genuine smile. Well, he said. Take off your coat. Junseo ya. Coat. A man checked it, found the gun in the pocket, held it up so the room could see, and set it on the floor. So, Taek-soo said, rolling his shoulders. The girl. Say my name. He turned to her, delighted, like she'd done a trick. The girl. Kwon Youngjae. That wasn't Zora. That was Junseo, a man detached from the wall. Mid-40s. Zora knew the face. He'd poured her a drink once and told her about his daughter's piano recital. Say it. Kwon's voice came out cracked. 900 a month. From Hanul facilities. Since March 2019. The room made a sound. Sit down. Kwon sat on the floor. That was apparently the arrangement. Zora hadn't known that part. Park Sang-woo. 1,200. Since 2021. Sit. Im Junho. 600 a month. He was crying before he finished. 6 years. Sit down. They came out one at a time after that, and the room learned the rhythm of it. A name, a number, a year, a man lowering himself onto the floor. 10 of them. Taek-soo watched his own network walk out of the walls and sit down in front of him. By the 6th, he'd stopped smiling. By the 9th, he'd stopped moving. The 10th was a boy of about 24 with a limp. He stopped in front of Zora, said something quietly in Korean she didn't understand, then turned and said, 400 a month. 8 months. It started after she stitched my leg. He wanted to know what she was finding. Zora kept her face exactly where it was, because 30 men were watching it. 10, Junseo said. 19 years, and this is what you built. 10 men too ashamed to tell each other. He took one hand out of his pocket. Nobody's dying for you today. Not one man in this room lifts a finger. They're all just going to watch. And Taek-soo did the thing that had made him dangerous for 19 years. He laughed. That's her, isn't it? That's not you. You couldn't build that on your best day. He wiped his eye. You know what you've done, Junseo-ya? You've told 30 men that 10 of them can steal from you for 6 years and get forgiven. Junseo didn't answer. Taek-soo heard the gap and went into it. Look at him. Every man in here just learned the price of betraying this family is a conversation. His father would have... My father did the same thing in 1994. Taek-soo stopped. Junseo didn't look at him. He looked at the 2 old men in white. One of them nodded. Once. Then Taek-soo stopped performing, and what was underneath came up into his face, and it was ugly and it was old. I sat outside your bedroom door for 3 months. I slept in a chair. When your father died, the elders came to me and said he's 22. He's not ready. And I said give him a year. His voice dropped. I gave you 19 years and you gave me a garage on Manhattan Place. I gave you the second seat in this family. And then you took your problems to a bookkeeper. Because she was right. She's been here 9 weeks. And she found in 9 weeks what you hid for 6 years. Junseo's voice didn't move. That's not her fault. That's yours. Taek-soo looked at Zora then, and she saw the exact moment he stopped trying to win. Fine. He reached into his jacket. 4 men moved. He held up both hands, empty except for a white envelope, and something about the way he was smiling now put the hair up on her arms. I brought your paper, sweetheart. Take it. Take it or I'll read it out loud. Taek-soo. Module 4300, he said to the room, loudly in English, is a housing unit at Men's Central Jail, and there's a 22-year-old boy in it named Zora Adeyemi. He's her brother. I have owned him for 11 days. He turned in a slow circle. So before you decide who you're standing with, she's not one of you. She's a woman with a hostage on the outside. He has counsel. Zora's voice cut across the room. Taek-soo stopped. Delacroix and Brandt filed the 3rd, Motion for reconsideration of pretrial detention, Judge Ramirez, calendared for the 21st. She said it the way she said numbers, flat and clean. Your sergeant opened his file Tuesday and closed it, because no county employee in Los Angeles reassigns a represented defendant 11 days out from a hearing. It isn't loyalty, Mr. Yu. It's liability. She took 2 steps forward. You threatened me with a system. I read the system. Silence. And then Yu Taek-soo dropped the envelope on the floor and went for Junseo with his bare hands. It lasted about 11 seconds. Nobody helped. That had been decided beforehand, and Zora understood, watching it, that it had been decided for the room. Taek-soo was bigger. He got a hand in Junseo's shirt and turned him into the table, and Zora heard the stitches go, heard Junseo make the first sound she'd ever heard out of him. And she started forward, and somebody caught her arm. Then Junseo got his feet under him. She saw the end of it. Taek-soo on his knees, one arm bent up behind him at an angle arms don't go, and the white jade knife open in Junseo's right hand, the edge laid flat under his jaw. Junseo was breathing hard, blood coming through his shirt at the ribs. He looked up. He looked at Zora, and she understood he was asking her. Not for permission. He'd never asked permission for anything in his life. He was asking her to watch, because she'd said she wouldn't be a woman behind a door, and this was the door, and he was holding it open. She did not look away. She did not say don't. She gave him one small nod, and what she meant by it was, I see exactly what you are. Do what you came to do. Junseo folded the knife. He's yours, he said to the elders. He doesn't die in my house in front of my mother's grandchildren. Take him out the back. 2 men lifted Yu Taek-soo off the floor. At the door he got his head around over his shoulder, and there was almost nothing left in his face. 9 weeks, he said. 9 weeks, she agreed. The door shut. They opened the great room that night for the first time in 9 months, all the tall lamps uncovered. The 10 who'd sat on the floor that morning were standing at the back, and by 10 o'clock, one of them was laughing at something, and that was how Zora knew it had worked. There was one place at the long table nobody sat in. Nobody had announced it. Somebody had set it and left it, and every man who passed went around. Baek Junseo came down at 8, which nobody could remember her doing, and put a folded paper in Zora's hand. The promissory note. 8%. 36 months. He wanted to tear it up. I told him he'd be an idiot. A gift is a leash. She closed Zora's fingers over it. You'll pay every dollar, and I will not be soft with you about one of them. And in 3 years you'll owe this family nothing. That is when your seat is real. My seat. Do you imagine any of us can go back to the books after tonight? You will run this family's money. You are running it already. Her chin came up. I am 81 and I would like to be bored before I die. He found her on the terrace an hour later, shoes in her hand. You're bleeding through your shirt. I know. So sit down. He sat. She knelt in front of him with the kit she'd carried out 20 minutes earlier, because she was not a woman who was surprised by anything anymore, and opened his shirt and looked at the wreck of her own straight line. You're going to have a terrible scar. I have terrible scars. You're going to have my terrible scar. She threaded the needle. Different thing. She started sewing. He watched her do it. Ask me. Ask you what? You've had a question in your mouth for 6 hours. The boy with the leg. He went on Taek-soo's payroll the week I stitched him. She didn't look up. Did you know that night? No. Would you have told me? No. She laughed once, without much in it. At least you're consistent. Zora. She stopped. It was the first time he had used her name. 9 weeks of Miss Adeyemi. and she hadn't realized how long she'd been waiting until it landed. I don't tell people things when knowing them helps them and hurts me. I tell them when it's true and it's finished. That isn't going to change. He looked down at her. So, decide now whether you can live next to it. You're the only person on this earth who gets it at all, and if that's not enough, I'd rather know before you're in deeper. Zora put in the 5th stitch, and the 6th. On the 7th, in the library, I had the contract in my hand. The original. I know. Her head came up. You know? You were in there 11 minutes and came out and threw up in my mother's planter. I know what 11 minutes is. And you said nothing. There was nothing to say. You put it back. I put it back because I ran the odds on him keeping his word, not because I'm good. She held his eyes. If the math had come out the other way, I'd have handed you to him and driven to Men's Central and never lost a night's sleep. That's what I am. So you decide too. Neither of them moved. Then Junseo took the needle out of her hand, set it on the stone, and put his hand along the side of her jaw. Zora went very still. I've had 90 men swear to me in my life. Everyone said they'd never leave. 10 of them sat on my floor this morning. His thumb moved once. You're the first person who's ever told me the exact conditions under which you'd sell me out. That's the only promise anyone has ever made me that I believe. That's the most broken thing I've ever heard. Yes. We're both. Yes. And she came up off her knees and kissed him. He caught her with the hand that wasn't holding his own ribs together, and he did not hold her carefully, and the kit went off the bench and scattered gauze across the terrace, and neither of them noticed. When she pulled back, she had her forehead against his, and both of them were breathing like they'd run somewhere. You have 6 stitches in. Then finish them. Junseo. Say it again. Junseo. She was laughing. She hadn't laughed in 11 days. I'm not going to be your secret. Not in this house. Not on a stair. Not behind a door. Come inside. He stood and pulled her up with him. Right now. Through the doors with me. There's 30 men in there and every one of them watched you take that room apart this morning. Let them see. She put her shoes down on the stone and stepped into them. Button your shirt. You're bleeding on my dress. No. Junseo. They can see that too. And he took her hand, not her elbow, not her wrist, her hand, laced through, the way you hold someone you are not planning to explain. And they walked in through the tall doors into the loudest room in Los Angeles. The talking didn't stop. That was the thing she remembered afterward. Nobody went silent. Nobody stared. 30 men glanced up, saw, and went back to their food, because it had already been decided that morning and this was only the paperwork. Only Baek Junseo looked for any length of time. She was by the window with a cup of barley tea, and when she caught Zora's eye across the whole bright length of that room, she raised the cup about an inch off the saucer. Then she went back to her tea and left them to it. Zora passed the empty place at the end of the table on her way to hers. There was a card folded on it, in Junseo's handwriting, with the name of a restaurant on Olympic and a date in October. She didn't say anything about it. Neither did he. Have you ever been the one in the room everybody underestimated? Right up until the moment they needed you? Tell me in the comments.